So we very clearly have a crime issue in our major cities. And Trump wants to send in federal troops to help clean up the cities. People are up in arms about it. They don't want that. They don't want that kind of presence in their cities. They want their communities to be left alone. They're doing just fine. Listen to what these guys got to say.
DC is fine. It's nothing wrong with DC that doesn't happen anywhere else, in the States. Just their presence is good if the DC police need assistance, but I don't think they need the National Guard. Some cities are worse than DC, and the crime rate has gone down.
And the young people, they are kind of out there. I don't know what their problem is, but they getting kind of outrageous. That's in D.C. and in Maryland and New York, everywhere.
He's just starting here, okay? He's not going to end with here. Let him know that he is going against the vast majority. Crime in D.C. is at a low, and he's using that for an excuse.
His accusations that crime is on the rise is baseless. I think it was one of the Doge folks that got mugged, and he's using that as this catalyst to militarize D.C., which is insanity to me. Insane overreach. It's completely unnecessary.
I think this is a way for him to take control of D.C. like he's been wanting to do. Crime has been down. Of course, you're going to take precautionary measures. You're going to make sure that you vigilant about, where you're walking and what's going on around you. But it's just the thing about living here.
DC.
But doesn't that say so much that you have to be so vigilant when you walk around? You have to keep your eyes peeled every time you're walking around. And it could be any city. I mean, it's a real problem. And I'm not even trying to play the blame game necessarily. I mean, this article here talks about how the different cities that are being proposed to have National Guard sent to them are Democratic mayors, but it points out a couple of them have Republican governors, which is kind of an interesting trick they're trying to play there, because those cities still have Democrat, mayors, Cleveland and Kansas City here. But that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just talking about the fact that we do have violent crime in our major cities, and it's really bad. And it's been going on for my whole life, and it's only seemingly getting worse. And my question is, what do we do about it, if anything? Because one of the thoughts I have about it is, are we going to move away from cities altogether? It's a real shame to even have that thought, because cities are what really help build this country. I mean, that's where your industrial mega centers were. And that's where communities thrive together. And so to think that we're going to lose that is heartbreaking in a lot of ways. But you got to consider what people care about the most. And when you have a family, you have to be concerned about their safety. You have to be worried if you're living in a neighborhood that isn't safe. You can't protect your kids and your wife 24 hours a day. So what are you going to do if you're in a community where they're constantly under threat? Or at least you feel like there's a threat out there all the time, and you always have to watch out for what you're doing and where you're going and who you're going with, and so on and so forth. It's too much for people. So if they have the means and the inclination, they move to the suburbs. But my thing is, are we even going to need to have suburbs anymore? Because if you think about it, with Elon having that Starlink internet, you can live in a rural community and have all of the conveniences as far as entertainment and stuff. Like the TV and the internet was always a big deal about moving to a rural community because you just didn't have access in the same way that you can in a suburban or urban area. And I know that kind of might seem silly, like to a lot of people who live in cities or who live in rural areas, because they're like, is that really the defining factor for people? But it can be. It really can be. But more than that, even, is the idea of self driving cars. And I'm not talking about self driving cars specifically. What I'm saying is, if I want to live in a rural community and I want to have a big piece of land and I want to have a barn and I want to have animals and I just want to do the whole like little mini farm thing, whatever. I want to do that whole big deal, but I still have to have a job, and my job requires me to go into work every single day. And that commute is going to be like what, an hour and a half, 2 hours? That's too much. Can't do that. No way. But what if you have self-driving RVs, which I think they're already making, right? I think Tesla's already making those. So you have the self-driving RV. It has a shower. It has a toilet. It has a little kitchenette. It presumably has places you could put your work clothes in, like a cupboard or a closet. And so you can prepare everything you're going to need for the morning ahead of time. You wake up in your bed. You go to your RV. You don't even shower. You don't make breakfast. You don't do nothing. You go in your RV. The RV takes off, self-drives you to work. While it's driving to work, you're cooking your eggs and you're, taking a shower, getting dressed, reading the news on your phone or whatever. And you're having a normal, relatively normal morning. It's just that you're commuting at the same time. Dude, that might be the future. That might be the future. So you have the ability to live very remotely, yet have no loss in the amount of conveniences that you have, other than you won't have immediate access to some of the cultural activities that happen in cities. But I'll be honest with you, the cost benefit of going to those activities is often a factor for a lot of people, especially if they have a family. They're not going to go downtown in a city that has a high crime rate. In most cities, a lot of cities have a high crime rate. Even if they keep the downtown area relatively, have a high police presence in those areas, and the crime rate is relatively low, it doesn't last. It's not a guarantee by any means. It's not even close to that. So it's just not worth it to people. And the perception is still negative for a lot of people, even if you can say that like this particular block doesn't get crime. It doesn't matter, dude. Like the perception is still there for a lot of people. You don't want to be there. So I'm just saying, you can have the cities cleaned up by national guardsmen and federal forces, and have the cities kind of thrive, hopefully, or people can just abandon them altogether, which is kind of what's been happening for a long time, but it can happen to an extreme level now with technology. And I don't know what the right thing is, and I don't know what the future holds for all of this. Cities became cities because they have certain geographical attributes that make them, good for building factories and things, right? Like they're close to rivers often. Well, what if in the future those are mostly just data center hubs, AI and nuclear power plants and all of that stuff going on, and the waterway cools the reactors, and it cools the data centers and all that stuff. And they're mostly, the cities are mostly just places to visit. They're cleaned up because nobody lives there, but they're just places for computers and, a few people who have to maintain the equipment and stuff. But mostly the cities are abandoned and people are just spread out. And then you finally have your melting pot, because it's not one group of people that's spreading out. It's everybody. Everybody's spreading out, and they're choosing who they want to engage with. And it's like the bizarro American dream. It's like the opposite of what you would always expect and what you would even want. But I don't know. It's interesting. I know that what I'm saying is a bit extreme. I don't think the cities will be abandoned completely, especially a lot of the cities that have already kind of undergone some revitalization and stuff. But I don't know if I want federal forces policing the cities. But I don't know that the cities can police themselves. What do you guys think?